Hey guys, it's Clara from Online Fabric Store. You can make aprons out of many types of fabric, but oilcloth is a great choice because it's easy to wipe clean. Plus it comes in many fun colors and patterns. So let's get started. The materials you'll need are 1 yard of oilcloth, a ruler, 7 yards of bias tape, thread, clips or pins, scissors, and a marker. Cut out a 26-inch square from the oilcloth. You can make the apron any size you want, but this is generally a good size for an adult. Cut out the pattern piece on the line. Place the piece on the top corner and trace along the edge. Flip the pattern piece over and repeat on the other side. If you're making your apron a different size, you can still use this piece. Just move it in or out and up or down to better fit the size. You can also draw your own curve. Cut out the top corners. For the pocket, cut out 2 pieces that are each 11 by 7 inches. Sew the 2 pieces of oilcloth together with the right sides facing out. You can get pre-made bias tape or make your own out of broadcloth or quilting cotton. I'm using a 7/8 inch double fold bias tape quilt binding, but 1/2 inch bias tape is also fine. Unfold the bias tape and line up the edge on the bottom side. Leave 2 or 3 inches loose and sew on the first crease. When you get to the corner, stop when you're the same distance from the edge as the seam allowance. Turn and sew diagonally to the corner. Fold the bias tape all the way up so you get a 45-degree angle. Then fold it down so the crease is lined up with the edge. Start to sew at the edge. Continue until you get to the next corner and repeat. Stop about 4 inches from where you started. Lay one end over the other, then mark and cut a 1-inch overlap. Line up the 2 ends and sew with a 1/2 inch seam allowance. Open the seam and finish sewing the bias tape. Clip the corners to reduce bulk. Fold the bias tape around to the back and clip in place. You can also use pins, but they leave permanent holes in oilcloth, so only pin where there's bias tape. At the corners, fold the back at a 45-degree angle. Make sure the bulk of the fold is on the opposite side as the front. Top stitch 1/8 of an inch or less from the inner edge of the bias tape. Cut 2 pieces of bias tape that are 30 inches long and 2 that are 24 inches long. At one of the ends, open the bias tape and fold the edge in 1/4 of an inch and refold the tape. Sew across the end, then up the open side with an 1/8 inch seam allowance. You can also top stitch the other side if you want to make the stitching even. Repeat for all the ties. Place the longer ties 1 inch down from the corners at the waist and clip. The raw edges should be aligned. Clip the other ties 1 inch in from the corners at the neck. Sew all the ties in place. Attach the bias tape to the apron piece in the same way as the pocket. When sewing around the curve, sew a little bit at a time, then adjust the tape as you go. If you want your apron lined, cut out a piece of fabric the same size as the oilcloth and sew them together before adding the bias tape. You can use a cotton fabric or another piece of oilcloth. When top stitching on the front of the bias tape, make sure to fold the ties back before sewing over them. Place the pocket so it's centered on the front and the top is lined up with the bottom of the waist ties. Pin it in place only on the bias tape so the pinholes don't show. You could also use double-sided tape. Top stitch the sides and the bottom of the pocket about 1/8 inch from the edge. Sew the ties at the outer edge of the bias tape and the apron is complete. This oilcloth apron is a great handmade gift that's actually useful. Check out our selection of oilcloth and pick some out for yourself or a friend. Thanks for watching this OFS project.